Hello, good evening. I'd like to firstly thank Lily for providing me and NRS with the opportunity to connect with healthcare professionals out in the community. I'd also like to reinforce my support and respect for the healthcare professionals working in a very challenging, both financially and systemic period within the NHS. I want to give a bit of context to strategic drivers behind self-management. Chapter 1 of the NHS long-term plan makes personalised care business as usual across the healthcare system. Personalised care means people have the choice and control over the way their care is planned and delivered, based on what matters to them and their individual strengths, needs and preferences. This happens within a system that supports people to stay well for longer and makes the most of the expertise, capacity and potential of people, families and communities in which they live in. We need to deliver increased outcomes and better experiences for patients. And one of the key 5 major practical challenges to the NHS service model in the long-term plan is how do we deliver that? It recognises that personalised care is central to a new service model for the NHS, including working through primary care networks in which people have more options, better support and properly joined up care at the right time in the optimal care setting. This shift represents a new relationship between people, professionals and the healthcare system. It provides a positive change in the power and decision making that enables people to feel informed, have a voice, be heard and be connected to each other and their communities. The comprehensive model for personalised care has been co-produced with people with lived experience and a wide range of stakeholders and brings together 6 evidence-based and interlinked components, each of which is defined by a standard, replicable delivery model. And the components are shared decision making, critical within self-management, personalised care and support planning, enabling choice, including legal rights and rights to choice, social prescribing and community-based support, and supported self-management is number 5th in that line. 6 is personalised health budgets and integrated personal budgets. NRES has received an honorarium for participation in this Lily BSR webinar that will be available to download post-event. Lily and BSR do not have responsibility for or provide content for the websites, apps or printed resources I will discuss throughout this presentation. Why self-manage is such an important method of managing health in today's world? Because many diseases and illnesses are incurable and the best way to manage the condition, improving health outcomes, is through effective self-management techniques and practice. The Department of Health are aware that a person's ability to self-manage is one of the most important, often untapped resources available to the government for improving outcomes for people with a long-term condition, such as rheumatoid arthritis. By providing the right information and support, people can develop confidence needed to self-manage, and in doing so, become more acceptable and responsible for managing their own health and well-being. Self-management is a method of managing a disease or long-term health condition. Through understanding the underlying issues, risks, harms and strategies can be developed to reduce the impact and improve outcomes. For example, RA patients have limited access to healthcare professionals. Often it can be just an annual review of maybe half an hour to an hour. If a patient understands how their DAS score was calculated, it will improve the way they engage with their healthcare professional. It will also underpin the way they contribute to the healthcare professional meetings, taking an active role as opposed to a passive one. This approach builds shared decision making and empowers the patient. An informed and empowered patient will have a reduced need for primary and secondary care, reducing the burden on the NHS. This is a win for the NHS and for the patient. Much of self-management is universal. It's about an attitude and behaviour change, focusing on healthy lifestyle choices underpinned with increased knowledge and understanding. RA can be a uniquely challenging disease. Different people respond differently to drugs and treatment. Core themes include understanding the disease, the need to reduce and manage inflammation, pain management, adherence to drug regimes, fatigue, pacing, and understanding their personal triggers. Patients need to understand how external influences impact on their RA, such as stress, and then attune themselves to their bodies so that they increase awareness around where a flare is potentially taking place and take according action quickly. A key element of self-management is mental health well-being. Outcomes for RA patients are significantly decreased when comorbid mental health issues are present. There are many barriers which include access to quality evidence-based information, enabling understanding and learning, access to peer groups, enabling the sharing of experience, medication in the healthcare system, how to deal with family issues and employment problems, access to trained professionals who can advise and guide patients through different stages of their RA journey and motivation. Does the patient have good levels of personal activation measure? The first polling question we're going to ask you is, how many people have a long-term condition in the UK? 5 million, 10, 15 or 20? If you would just like to press the equal button, and then we'll tell you the results. So, living with a condition for which there's no cure has a devastating effect on a person and their family. The impact can extend to social, economic, psychological, physical, cognitive and cultural aspects of a person's life. People cope as well as they can with the support they have, but frequently do not have the information or skills to develop healthy responses to their condition, or make well-informed decisions about their treatment and life with the disease. Much research has shown that people living with long-term chronic conditions can gain better control over their lives when they invest time and effort adopting a self-management approach to their disease, encompassing learned coping skills which can significantly improve quality of life and positively impact on their long-term prognosis. The Department of Health defines self-management as the individual's ability to manage the symptoms, treatment, physical and psychosocial consequences and lifestyle changes inherent in living with a chronic condition. In practice, it's about being able to manage one's RA, the treatments, the day-to-day life in the best possible and most realistic way. When you have a condition like RA, it's important to know that these are specific skills which can be learned to gain confidence and knowledge in managing your long-term condition. With as much as 30% of England's population with a long-term condition, or wider cost studies have shown that those with conditions and mental health issues are less likely to be employed, thus increasing the burden on the tax system. I attended a session on Saturday and a patient shared with me that they felt they'd been pushed out of their employment by their employers, again due to their RA and the inability of their employers to understand the true issues affecting them. Access to HCPs is often limited and short. Self-management enables patients to take control of their health, utilising knowledge, tools and skills they are enabled to make decisions and choices that will improve their health outcomes. The most effective way to support people with a long-term condition is to improve the physical and psychological outcomes through self-management. As the population increases its age, the proportion living with a long-term condition continues to increase. Healthcare strategies are increasingly focusing on monitoring and maintenance as opposed to those of the cure. Self-management is embraced by educators as a way of improving patient outcomes for the growing population of long-term population, while adapting historical models of care. With an ageing population comes increasing health complexities. 58% of the people with long-term conditions and over 60 with 40% are under 40. Still a significant population. We continue to see health inequalities mirroring financial equalities, with 60% coming from the poorest and 30% from the richest social classes. People with 2 or more long-term conditions are 7 times more likely to have depression than the general population. When mental health is an additional comorbidity, outcomes are further reduced. A person with mental health issues often lacks the energy, the drive and the focus to be able to manage and develop strategies. We know many people with RA have mental issues, which often go undiagnosed. The need to integrate mental health assessments within the RAK pathway is critical. The last 10 to 15 years has seen significant management with people with mental health services bringing out these issues. We now need to apply that to physical issues such as a population of RA. Just imagine you live with periods of chronic pain, fatigue and stiffness, leaving you unable to engage in normal activities, family, holding your baby, employment. Periods of remission are often clouded with anxiety and future relapse. RA combines the necessary ingredients for mental health issues. In the second poll question, in a recent NRAD's National Health and Wellbeing Survey, we asked how many people have been identified as being depressed through the hospital diagnosis assessment, but hadn't formally been diagnosed within the healthcare system. Was it 1, 28%, 2, 41%, 3, 52%, or lastly, 69%? So, impact of long-term conditions on the NHS. So long-term conditions are overwhelming NHS operations. this significant population are stretching the NHS and challenging historical models of care and established care pathways. Chapter 1 of the NHS long-term plan makes personalised care business as usual across the healthcare system. This shift represents a new relationship between people, professionals and the healthcare system. It provides a positive change in power and decision-making that enables people to feel informed, have a voice, be heard and be connected to each other and their communities. As existing systems change to respond to this new type of healthcare challenge, so new methods and techniques emerge to meet the evolving demand. Self-management is an evolutionary response and offers a valuable strategy in dealing with responding to this challenging new healthcare issue. By motivating the patient to take greater responsibility for their personal care, self-management sits at the heart of the process, imparting knowledge, skills, techniques, and aim to increase periods of stabilisation, reducing demand on primary and secondary care. As the patient increases their self-reliance through newly acquired knowledge and skills, their health outcomes improve as their use of the healthcare system reduces. Historical patients within the NHS and the vision of the health system was one that was able to cure us of ailments. In 1942, the Beveridge Report recommendation to create a comprehensive health and rehabilitation service for prevention and cure of disease. It formed the basis of the post-war reform known as the welfare state, which includes expansion of the national insurance and the creation of the National Health Service. We're in the middle of a perfect storm at the moment. People with long-term condition need a different model of care. As the World Health Organization concluded, the focus on hospital-based, disease-based and self-contained silo curative care models undermines the ability of the health system to provide universal, equitable, high-quality and financially sustainable care. Health systems are often unaccountable to the populations they serve and are therefore limited to incentivize to provide the responsive care that matches the needs of the users. People are often unable to make appropriate decisions about their own health and healthcare, or exercise control over decisions about their health and that of their communities. As a healthcare professional, you will often encounter dysfunctional elements of the care system which have evolved in response to perverse targets, cuts or means of managing lengthy wells. This focus needs to shift from systems to patient. A patient with a long-term condition is a frequent flyer within the NHS. They account for 64% of outpatient appointments, 50% of GP appointments and 70% of inpatient beds. In order for the system to adapt to these new frequent flyers, a leap to a personalised care has to occur. Technology will play a pivotal role in achieving this goal. However, patients equipped to effectively self-manage are informed, empowered and able to be more effective in managing their physical and psychological well-being. This will lead to further improved health and social outcomes, reducing demand and creating capacity within the NHS. Self-management is the foundation of increasing the activation of patient in their care. When fully mastered, the patient will be equipped to better understand their health, understand the issues such as diet, exercise, mental health and well-being, directly affecting their quality of life. They'll know how to navigate the healthcare system, and by developing and nurturing health literacy within the community groups, we improve outcomes and mortality rates and reduce, again, demand in the NHS. What is self-management? So self-management combines three sort of disciplines: education, behaviour change and discipline itself. Self-management is not a ignoring or denying a healthcare condition, nor is it about allowing that condition to dominate a patient's life, but instead it offers a different way. The third way means that by increasing understanding of the condition, being able to recognise and manage the emotional impact and being willing to make adaptations to the things the way they're done, increases their control, focus on their health and social outcomes. As well as understanding their physical needs, they need to manage their mental health. In many ways, mental health is the foundation for self-management. To achieve behaviour change, RA patients have to engage. The first point of contact often is the healthcare professional within the system. This initial engagement can have a positive effect in maintaining engagement with a range of self-management systems. Introducing RA patients to self-management groups, referral systems, utilising apps, attending different groups, opening all these options to patients is critical at the first part of their journey. As a healthcare professional, you need to assess the patient's activation and develop nudges that encourage and direct them to these self-management interventions and services. Education. Understanding what is harmful to the RA patient. Many patients have a unique response to treatment, as well as issues such as diet and exercise. It's vital that patients develop a self-awareness that enables them to maintain a balance, reducing incidence of flares. Understanding what improves their condition and what triggers to increase flares is critical in self-management. Changing behaviour. Taking the steps to alter behaviour to improve physical health is the first step. This could be a change to a health diet. It could be regular exercise, ceasing smoking, monitoring the condition. Through use of apps and technology, increased adherence to prescribed regimes can be achieved. And discipline. Maintaining lifestyle change is often the hardest part of any behaviour change. How many times have you started a diet, kept to it for a week, maybe 2, and then reverted to old eating habits? Self-management requires discipline and acceptance that you have to learn new skills and change certain habits to improve your quality of life. It's not rocket science, but with any behaviour change, you need to commit and be disciplined. The skill is understanding the stage of change that the patient is in and then matching that to the appropriate nudge. Prochaska and DeClementi highlight the stages of change and the model of change. Have sort of 5 individual characteristics. There's the pre-contemplation stage, when people begin to think about something. Contemplation, they're thinking about it more often. They then go into a stage of preparation, where they're making active measures to prepare for the change. They then go into the action stage. So again, if we think about this in terms of dieting, how often do you think, I need to lose weight, this is a bit too tight for me? You then give it a bit more, what sort of diet can I go for? Maybe I need to cut out my carbs, I need to reduce my meat intake. You then prepare, you then go into your action mode, and often people are very successful in losing weight, but the hardest part is then maintaining it. It's that final part, the final step that keeps the behaviour change fixed and focused for a period of time. So education resources are critical, as I've mentioned, in helping patients to embrace self-management. The NRAS has a website which is a source of vast amount of information covering all things RA. Great place to start exploring issues ranging from medication, the impact of RA on organs as well as the joints. There are links to a range of support systems including online face-to-face, peer groups, webinars. A core objective of this site is to empower the RA community to understand the nature of RA, its impact, and how to improve outcomes. We have massive publications, and they're a great resource and reference. Again, covering issues such as medicines, employment, rights. All these can be ordered free. They're available to both healthcare professionals and to patients in general. We have a number of different types of online communities. We have our Facebook page, but we also have Health Unlocked, which is an opportunity for many people to come and share their experiences. We currently have about 25,000 registered users who share all sorts of information, and it's been evidenced to improve patients' activation. And webinars. Here we provide access to experts to hear directly from them and ask questions. A great resource for patients to broaden their knowledge base and attract international audience. They're an amazing resource. Just like this one for the healthcare professionals. And I guess finally, access to expert patient groups to best research in RA. Expert patient group for NRAS, BSR, EULAR for some of the best information becomes a way of life. They become expert patients, taking an active role in the industry, helping to contribute to both pharmacy, but research. They become influential in commissioning groups, helping to shape the future. Again, NRAS is a patient-led organisation, is a classic example of where patients have driven the way forward for the work that we do. It's important that patients get the most from their consultations. Apps are a great resource which are growing more and more as we see on a daily basis. We're increasingly approached by different app providers. And we're now seeing apps that actually engage with the healthcare professional as well as the patient, giving 2 sides of communication. There's still a long way to go with apps, but there are some great opportunities to improve self-management techniques. Diet. We are what we eat, and your body is a temple. Many patients with RA have reported significant improvements by changing their diet. Many RA patients believe in properties of certain foods and distribute amazing health improvements. It's also clear that a placebo effect adds to the improved sense of well-being. As we live more healthily, we feel that physical and associated psychological benefits. Exercise, everyone is different. What works for one may not work for another. There's significant evidence that planned regular exercise can have highly beneficial impact. Patients can be referred to a physical activity specialist or a physiotherapist. Some gyms now have instructors who understand about long-term conditions and can build packages specifically for them. Sleep is critical. People with RA frequently talk about sleep disturbance problems which can occur at any time during their journey with the disease. Sometimes problems can be related to something specific, such as pain. Sometimes it's difficult to pinpoint what the problem is. However, getting a good night's sleep is incredibly important for anyone, especially someone with a long-term condition such as RA. Medical adherence is a challenging one. We can't emphasize enough how important it is for patients to take their prescribed medication regularly, exactly as prescribed, i.e. the correct dosage. However, it's easy, especially when patients are feeling well, to forget. Also, if they're suffering side effects, they may not want to take their medication. Evidence suggests that people with RA take their treatment between 30 and 80% of the time, but do not tell their healthcare professionals about this. So when they miss a dose, it's very tricky. Good control is reliant on taking the medicine. Without it, patients increase risk of flares, ongoing pain and stiffness. But they need to understand this, and this needs to be communicated in a way that they embrace and actually leads to behaviour change. When newly diagnosed, it can be extremely frightening for patients. A number of thoughts go through their heads. This is a lifelong condition. Their life will never be the same again. Is it going to change beyond recognition? They can't do things they once did. And on it goes. It's important to provide access to information at this point, and if possible, to speak with peers. There's a normal reaction for newly diagnosed patients. Some want to bury their head, some want to find out more information. However, diagnosis will lead to normalisation. Again, one of the things that NRAS provides is access to people with lived experience of RA, so they can talk through their own personal journey, communicating their highs and their lows, and reassuring patients that it will be normalised. Maintaining mental health is a fundamental building block of self-management. Patients' mental health is critical in maintaining their physical well-being. There are lots of apps now which support mindfulness. Helping with meditation for 10 to 15 minutes in a busy day can help make all the difference. If you can imagine any illness that leads to stiff joints, limiting movement, pain, fatigue, it's going to have a profound impact on mental health. I touched on earlier about the results of the hospital assessment, which showed high levels of both anxiety and depression, which were both undiagnosed in the patient group. Integrating mental health assessments within the care pathway for RA patients is a critical way of ensuring self-management is embraced. Learning how to cope with pain and unpredictably of a flare are probably two of the most challenging of living with rheumatoid arthritis, especially in the early days. It's often the case that experiencing the symptoms of a flare without knowing what it was prompted patients to seek medical help in the first instance. Educating the patients about a flare, how it can strike, the symptoms and potential triggers enable them to make the necessary changes to lifestyle, but also to recognise the risks that increase the onset of a flare and how to recognise it early. In an ideal world, a patient will complete the necessary learning to empower themselves to become highly health literate, underpinning a strong self-management culture. However, this reality is far from the way things are. They will need to be strong in some areas and probably weak in others. As healthcare professionals, we have to constantly review the way they approach their self-management with the aim of improving their engagement and nudging them in certain directions that helps them. The third poll question is, how many registered users do we have on the NRAS Health Unlocked online community? Is it 10,000, 18,000, 25,000 or 32,000? If you'd like to make your selection. Okay, maintenance, discipline and support. One of the most important tools is goal setting. This is critical in helping patients to identify their way forward, what they need to do, and helping them to make a plan. We need to move patients from contemplation to action stage, so planning is critical, giving them milestones. Any new journey or long-term journey, a roadmap's needed, setting out the milestones and the crossroads. Goals provide a simple framework to set a target which helps us move the patient towards self-management. Routine is vital in forming and cementing the new behaviour patterns. This could be relating to diet, ensuring all the necessary ingredients and relevant food is purchased and available. It could be the need for regular exercise. Staying connected to research demonstrates a commitment to further knowledge and understanding. Many active self-managers know so much about the condition, often able to challenge their healthcare professionals. So it's important that we always encourage them to research this information to the best of their ability. Apps I've mentioned already are an excellent tool for maintenance, recording RA, recording flares. They let you track the illness in real time so that you can then share that with your healthcare professional, enabling better understanding of how flares are impacting you and when they're affecting you. Also helping you to understand, is it a particular item of food? Is it an event that's triggering a flare, a source of stress? One of the most valuable sources of support are the groups and the peer communities. Again, NRAS has groups up and down the country, over 40, where people can come along. We have up to 600 people sharing and meeting on a regular basis. They get access to experts, speakers who they can then question and challenge. I've mentioned again about the online portals. We have over 25,000 active users, and we have over 1.5 million people visit the actual website every year. So this shows that the international audience and appetite for information is really growing. Okay, so outcomes. What are we looking to achieve? Obviously, we want improved physical and psychological well-being to the patients. We want to improve social functioning. And we want to reduce the demand in the NHS, creating capacities for healthcare professionals to refocus their time and resources on the critical parts of the programme. Self-management contributes to all of these elements, all of these outcomes we're driving for. Okay, the final polling question we're going to ask you is, what do you see as the benefits of self-management? Does it create capacity within the healthcare system? Does it drive a new type of adult-to-adult patient relationship style, which you think would be beneficial? Is it about a new strategy to meet the healthcare system's challenges? Or it feels right? There's an emotional connection as a healthcare professional working with self-management techniques. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you very much. And now I'll take some questions. Right, we're just going to go to the polling questions now and go to the responses. The first one was, how many people have long-term conditions? The correct answer was 15 million, which 77% of you got correct, which is excellent. But that's still quite a significant part of our population, and they represent a major impact on the healthcare system, whether we're talking primary care appointments, hospital beds, or secondary care. And it's really this significant part of the population that take up so much of the work within the NHS at the moment that we need to adopt self-management strategies with. Okay, the second question, and this was a really interesting one. I wanted to put it out there to get an idea of the understanding of what the actual prevalence of things like depression are within the healthcare system. So in the recent NRAS Emotional Health and Wellbeing Matters report, I asked how many people were positively identified as depressed through the HAD assessment, but not formally diagnosed within the care system. The actual response was 69%. That's the correct answer. Only 13% of you got it right. And this really reinforces the prevalence of mental health issues. Actually, 50% had issues diagnosed with anxiety, 69% with depression, which weren't actually identified. So it just really shows how commonplace mental health issues are within the RA community, and why we've got to really come up with some new innovative ways of focusing on that while still managing to deliver all the other critical parts of the pathway. The third question, how many registered users do we have on our NRAS Health Unlocked community? Well, again, hey, you got the best answer. 61% of you correctly identified 25,000. And that just gives you an idea of how powerful online communities can be. We monitor that community and we moderate it, so when people come on there posting strange questions or asking not so appropriate questions, we're able to jump in there, moderate it, and ensure that the focus is as sort of neutrally clean as possible. But online communities are having greater impacts on healthcare outcomes. The fourth question: what do you see as the benefit of the self-management? That's really interesting. So the first possible answer was creates capacity within the healthcare system. Nobody felt that was a viable option. Drives a new type of adult-to-adult relationship, change the dynamics perhaps within the doctor-patient relationship. Again, 0%. A new system and a new strategy to meet the healthcare system. 100% of you went for that answer. So that's really interesting that you see self-management as a really powerful strategy to meet the challenge of the healthcare system. And you know what? I think you're absolutely right. That's the power that self-management can offer going forward. So fantastic. I've got a couple of questions that have come up. The first one was, you mentioned the need to address mental health issues such as depression in RA. In your mind, whose responsibility is this screening? Rheumatology teams or primary care? Well, I would say it's undoubtedly within the rheumatology team. As the patient moves through the RA care pathway, I personally would like to see assessments on a regular basis, whether it's part of the annual assessment. We do a HAD assessment. We actually measure their mental health so we can see, is it going up or is it going down or is it stabilizing? What we can't do is assume that the patient is stable and free of any mental health issues because they present in a relatively solid and calm way. We have to dig a bit deeper. We have to ask a bit more complex questions, and we have to ensure that we do that regularly, monitor it and measure it. I cannot underestimate the significance of this. It really has to be done at all stages. So definitely within secondary care. The second question, which is interesting, is there any research that looks at the most effective way of delivering effective self-management in RA, i.e. personal one-to-one, education versus group work? Well, there isn't any real evidence about a particular model that works best. When we talk with our patient groups, a lot of them will say, I enjoy being part of a group format. I enjoy sharing information, bouncing off other patients. I can relate and empathize. I can sympathize. I can motivate. So there's a real humanistic element that goes within the self-management process. For others, they like to learn on their own, in their own space, in their own time. They like to have a one-to-one appointment. We're hearing more cases of group consultations where, say, 10 patients have access to one GP and a healthcare professional, and they'll bounce questions off that in a group format. I know, for example, we run things called Room for You events. We ran one on Saturday just gone, and the doctor was inundated with specific questions. People made notes. So it's a real valuable opportunity for them to access an expert and gain part of the information they need. Something we're working on extensively at the moment is developing the basis for an online e-learning platform where we hope to be able to offer self-management training to a much broader and wider population. With improvements in treatment, people are getting diagnosed much younger, so the onset of the disease is more hidden now. There's far less physical effects being shown, less deformities. So people are working more, people are having families, and their functioning is becoming almost a hidden disease to some extent. So we want to offer them online resources that they can access in their own time, in their own space, whether it be on a mobile device or through the web, where they can do learning, they can understand what's going on, but find new resources to access, such as the online community. Great question. Do we cover the evolved nations? Yes, we do. We work in Scotland, we work in Wales, we do some work in Northern Ireland. I was recently with Matt Vazant, our policy manager, and we were up in Scotland at a Scottish event. So we do a lot of work there. We work with our Scottish ambassadors, and again, we're working hard to develop some e-learning resources in Scotland because, again, they have some very tough geographical challenges. I think it's 80% of the population live in about 10% of the area, so big rural problems. So how do you deliver self-management? You've got to be very creative, and generally technology seems to be the way forward. Fourth question. There's a lot of misinformation and opinion based on little evidence on the web. How can we be sure to signpost patients to reputable sources of up-to-date and accurate information? Well, that's a great question. You know, you want to feel like you're sending your patients to somewhere where the information's checked and it has integrity. You know, I can tell you, obviously, NRAS, its reputation is second to none. However, I'm also telling you, people like online resources such as the Health Unlocked, where there's 25,000 people accessing it, and sometimes the information on there is about, I tried turmeric and it's cured me of all ailments. Everyone should use turmeric. Well, clearly that's not the case. So we moderate that, but there has to be a source, if you like, a venue for those people to express themselves and share that information. I can say we moderate that, but I can also say that the evidence that we provide, the publications, the materials, the training, are always evidence-based. We embrace the medical model. You know, we're not medical expertise. We work with them really outstanding medical teams and doctors who advise us, who help us build our literature. They review it, they edit it. So we have the top quality evidence-based products, which is something we've always embraced in NRAS. But it's a challenge seeing what's out there. So I'm obviously going to tell you, come to NRAS, but sometimes people need to explore their own choices and their own options. We will always, as an organisation, go down factual-based, evidence-based routes for recommendations. What are the most common triggers for a flare? Great question. They vary drastically for a number of people. I was at a recent event and I was talking with a guy, interesting enough, who was probably plus 60, who was using an app, and he used the app because he found for him he had to pace his activities. He said he very easily could get caught up in the garden, he'd get caught up in doing different things, he'd overexert himself, and he would always trigger a flare. So he would use an app as a means of monitoring his activity so that he can control it, to limit the incidence of flares. In other cases, it can be stress. Stressful events trigger flares. So it can be a whole host of things. And part of self-management is understanding what it is that triggers for each individual, understanding your own body and your own processes. And that's part of the journey that people go on with the self-management course. How can we as nurses improve self-management? So that's a fantastic question, you know, and I so appreciate and value the work you do. Nurses are so highly regarded by the RA community as being fantastic in the way you engage with the patients. We've launched a new service called the Right Start service, and that actually enables nurses to go online and make a very simple referral, which will send the details of the patient straight through to us, enabling us to reach out and engage them with self-management techniques. Now, this fits with the NICE guidelines about referring within 1 month of diagnosis, but the idea of the service is to actually take some pressure off the nurses to free up some of their time, confident that they know the patient is going to access self-management techniques. So again, I would say look out for the Right Start service, simple online referral, very much mirroring the McNicol process for cancer research. And it is about trying to help you guys with your element by taking some of that off you. With regards to monitoring apps, has there been any work to see if hypervigilance is? Not really. Apps are an interesting new world. We get approached by many different suppliers and providers. So where are we with them? It's early days. They're still evolving. They're still developing. They appear to be very good for monitoring, as I mentioned, with stress factors, monitoring pain, fatigue. You can then use them within a consultation process. But we're still looking to develop, I think, apps that have access to the healthcare professional as well as the patient. So there's an actual communication going on two ways rather than just the monitoring process. There's lots of research going on at the moment with apps. Artificial intelligence is really being viewed as a possible positive way forward in creating more capacity within the medical world. We're always going to need the human contact. However you look at that, that's fundamental to the process. Okay, we've got a final question now. How can we encourage the trust to provide group management programs for our patients? Well, do you know what? If I could do that, I would have done that by now. We have bent over backwards. We've worked with many CCGs. We've engaged broadly across the NHS. People all understand the value. They see the significance of it. The NHS plan, 10-year plan, embraces self-management as a great resource. It's about investing today in the patient, giving them the resources, the time, the nurture they need to be able to develop and manage their condition. But of course, money is so tight. So one of the things we're looking at is developing these e-learning programs, a suite of programs that we hope we can tailor to patients' different needs, that will focus on different elements such as fatigue, such as pain management, such as adherence to drugs, such as how to engage with your consultant, getting the best from your consultations. And we think the best route we have to do that is by going online to enable us to reach a much wider population, overcoming issues of travel, isolation. It's frustrating, isn't it? We all know self-management's a no-brainer, but unfortunately the investment just isn't there at the moment. And I guess that's when I think of the professionals working in the field, the challenge you guys face is working in those constrained environments where money is so tight, expectations are so high. I want to just thank you all for watching tonight. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Again, the value you bring to the system is beyond question. I want to thank Lily for the opportunity, and I want to thank you for Menraz. Thank you.